other people to get their questions asked. We also want to make sure that we're respecting the expertise of the room. Our panelists have dedicated their careers to these fields. Please engage with their ideas critically and curiously, and do so with respect, even when you disagree. Right, like I said, our panel, the FCDX organization may have its opinions about Project Jupiter, but our panelists are here to speak from their expertise, not from our opinion. We want to make space for all voices. If you've already asked a question, please hold off on asking a follow-up until everyone who wants to speak has had a chance. No harm, no hate. There's no place here for harassment, personal attacks, or language that demeans people based on their identity, background, or beliefs, especially toward our panelists or fellow audience members. Right, so again, if you disagree, you're welcome to disagree, just keep it to yourself. That's not to say that we don't welcome other opinions. Other opinions are welcome. There will be time for discussion after this forum where we can share and we can talk and we can discuss what was brought up during this forum. But as far as asking questions of our panelists, make sure it's focused on an actual real question, right? And then also, no hate speech in what you have to say. Trust the facilitator. I will be the moderator for this event. I reserve the right to cut you off and ask you to leave. Right? I'm here to make sure that things keep moving, to make sure that the Q&A is working. So please respect our community agreements and our turn taking. Like I said, I reserve the right to ask you to leave, and I will definitely exercise that if things are getting out of hand. Finally, please be present. Please be sure to silence or put your devices onto vibrate, and be mindful of your neighbors. We're here to be focused, we're here to learn, we're here to listen, and we're here to be ready. And I think with that, that's all I have. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. So let's see, where's Esperanza? There we go. All right, Esperanza's gonna be next.
Where are bathrooms? Down the hall and to the right. In case you need a bathroom, please take snacks. There's plenty of them. Hi, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Esperanza Chaides, and I'm an organizer with Youth United for Climate Crisis Action and also the Chihuahua Desert Extraction Group. And I'm very excited to hear from our panelists. And I'd like to just briefly make sure we're all on the same page about data centers and Project Jupiter specifically. So what is a data center? The Union of Concerned Scientists define data centers as, quote, physical buildings filled with thousands of computers and IT equipment that process AI requests, house critical applications, and store data in the cloud, unquote. These are noisy, hot warehouses that require huge amounts of energy, water, and land to operate. They power video streaming, social media, and now most recently AI. Data centers have existed for a long time, used by telecom companies, hospitals, universities, governments, but we are now seeing a very new kind of rapid construction of larger, more energy-intensive facilities brought about by tech billionaires racing for dominance. What is Project Jupiter? Project Jupiter is a massive despoilment of 1,400 acres of the Chihuahua Desert. For scale, it's 55% larger than NMSU's campus. Borderplex Digital Assets is the shell developer, and OpenAI and Oracle are the tenant companies that will run business in the facility. So let's talk about water briefly. Project Jupiter will require at least 10 million gallons to fill its cooling system initially, and they have already submitted emergency applications to drill new wells. The daily operational use, bathroom sinks, is capped at 60,000 gallons of water per day, but we still don't know how much total water, including for construction and electricity, that this project requires. Meanwhile, Santa Teresa does not have clean drinking water. Developers have manipulated a water-stressed region with the promise of $50 million to fix failing infrastructure. But money does not magically fix the reality that we do not have enough ground/surface water in our desert to support such a project. Every year, we see less and less water in the Rio Grande. Energy. Project Jupiter recently redacted their applications to power the facility with fracked gas and have submitted a new proposal to use fuel cells, which is a technology that has never operated at this scale. They have manipulated our state laws to allow them to power their project with a less regulated microgrid. The project is also expected to be connected to 2 pipelines that are in progress, so the 18-mile Green Chili project and then the Desert Southwestern pipeline. The pipeline would send 400,000 decatherms of gas daily to power Project Jupiter. That same amount of gas could supply winter heating in Hispaniola for 1 year. Lastly, I just want to talk quickly about jobs. We were promised 700 permanent, high-paying jobs. A lot of the construction jobs we know for sure have already gone out of state. The business at the University of Houston and Notre Dame published a paper published in December 2025 that looked at 387 hyperscale projects across few states under development last year, and statistically found that, quote, there is no clear evidence of a meaningful association between data center development and local tech job creation, end quote. We've been told that jobs justify the enormous 165 billion tax breaks we gave these companies, but data shows otherwise. How did we get here? We got here because corrupt politicians aided industry to secure legislative wins at the state capitol, because our county commissioners, with the exception of Susana Chaparro, representing District 4, failed to do their jobs properly and advocate in the best interests of their constituents. We are here because the Zoning and Planning Board unanimously voted for the rezoning of the area in contradiction of their own comprehensive 2040 plan that states that we must manage new growth to reflect constraints related to water and climate change. So we're here because we care about our future and our home, and I understand that that it's up to us to build the people's power and political will to undo this.
Come this way.
Okay.
I just have to turn it off.
There's a speaker here.
There's speakers on both sides. Let's stand here and hope it doesn't come. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So we're here because we need to build political power and will to undo this generational disaster before it's too late. Tech billionaires and their political allies count on our silence, division, and ignorance to move their agenda ahead. We must refuse to be silent. We must refuse manufactured division. We refuse to stay ignorant. With all that said, it's important to remember that this moment goes beyond Project Jupiter, and it goes beyond our fight here in Doña Ana County. We've invited our friend Vivek from No Desert Data Center Coalition in Tucson, and he traveled here to just remind us how our struggles are connected, and that, yeah, we have to stand up for each other. So I'll pass it to Vivek.
What an awesome turnout for Sunday afternoon. What's up, data center slayers? How's it going?
Do you want to switch? This one might be a little bit better. Do you want to just give it a little more volume?
Go with this one. Is it this one or is this one? This one? This one?
Bill, turn it up.
How about both? Is both better? Yeah. Testing. Oh, that sounds good. Which one is it? It's this one. Cool. Great. So yeah, I'm here from Tucson. It's really wonderful to be here in front of such a big crowd. This looks very familiar to me. In Tucson, our Pima County Board of Supervisors voted to sell about 290 acres of land to a data center developer last June. And it so happened that we could intervene and get the city to stop the project. So over 7 weeks, we mobilized our community in community meetings like this, and also mobilized everyone to turn out to the propaganda sessions that the city was putting on. Has anybody had to sit through one of those propaganda sessions? Yeah. Was it all just filled with speakers who were proponents of the project? No one to speak officially on behalf of those who opposed it? Yeah. Which is why spaces like this are so refreshing to see, and thank you so much for everyone who organized this. I'm coming to you with just a few basic principles that we operate by. We see these hyperscale data centers as kind of the physical manifestation of the largest transfer and consolidation of wealth in recent human history. It's going straight to the tech oligarchs, and it's all in the service of the cruelty industry. What does the cruelty industry mean? It means we've known for years that companies like Palantir are surveilling folks, right? And now there are companies like Flock running these automatic license plate readers. Like all of those are going into these giant data centers. It's also generative AI that's taking jobs. And we're often told that we've had data centers forever, and that's how the internet runs. And if you want your data on your phone, you need these data centers. Well, that's true to a certain degree. We have had data centers, but not these hyperscale data centers. And the use of the internet that you and I consume simply does not scale in relation to how quickly these hyperscale data centers are proliferating, right? It's not like Netflix has 1 billion new movies in their repertoire. It's not like we're uploading 10,000 times as many cat videos or baby photos, right? So we know what this is about. And we also know that this is not inevitable. That's another thing we hear, that these things are necessary. Well, you scratch a little bit and you ask necessary for what? And you scratch a little beyond that, and eventually there's no answer, because the folks who are proposing these projects, our elected officials, our administrative and bureaucratic staff for our governments can't explain it, because there's only so much that the marketers from the data center companies are telling them. We do not have a way to generate and provide enough energy for these monsters to consume and still have a livable planet. Facts. We cannot have gigawatts and gigawatts of new energy demand, supply it with fracked gas and coal, and still expect to have a livable planet. And we simply cannot spin up enough new renewables in the form of solar and wind to actually meet that demand. It's out of the question, it's not technologically possible. So sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. Right now in Tucson, we're on the back foot. They're killing acres and acres each day of living desert as we speak to construct this thing. But we have learned from our wins and our losses, and we have heard from other communities that they didn't know it was possible to fight until they saw us win. And each of our communities, as we fight these projects, learn from each other and we inspire each other. And seeing all of you in this room right now is inspiring me. And I'm so glad you all are here, and I really hope I get to read in the news that you beat this thing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna get into the panel discussion portion of our forum. We're gonna run this a little bit differently than it tends to, like a normal forum. What we're going to do is have each panelist go. They will talk to you a little bit about themselves and like their expertise, and then they will also talk to you about how that relates to AI data centers. And then once they're done, we will open up the floor for about 10 minutes of Q&A for that specific panelist. That way, questions are focused, questions are on point. And then also, if that panelist needs to take off, they can take off. And then we will have a more general open Q&A at the very end if there's still enough time for more general questions, or like if you had a follow-up question that you felt wasn't answered by another panelist, it will get taken care of. So our first panelist is Philip Simpson. And I'll come over here, hopefully it doesn't, hold on one second.
Is this working? Oh, yeah. I guess I should introduce myself first. Some of you know me, but my name is Phil Simpson. I had a long career civil service as an electrical and mechanical engineer, retired from White Sands Missile Range in 2017. And then my neighbor back here, Don Kurd, sitting in the back, started telling me about how El Paso Electric worked in terms of their financial incentives to just build more gas plants. So I got really involved in fighting Newman 6 natural gas power plant from a technical perspective. And the short version of the story is that we got the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission to say, no, you can't build it. And they said, well, we're gonna build it in Texas, so, you know, too bad. So that's what happened. That's how I got involved in utilities issues. Next slide. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to me. I'm going to talk mainly about just the enormous amount of CO2 emissions from the power plant. I'm going to maybe disagree just a little bit with the previous speaker. I think that it is possible. It's to power this thing with renewable energy. It does take a lot of land or geothermal, which is going to take time to develop. So I'll get into that a little bit more. You know, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name, but anyway, it may be true that on a global scale we don't have the resources to power all the data centers, but this one data center could be powered with renewables if we're willing to sacrifice a lot of land for solar. So, next slide. So, you know, if this 10 million tons of carbon dioxide emitted per year from the data center power plant is so much that it's hard to comprehend. So I want to compare it to something, and I chose El Paso Electric's system just because I'm familiar with that. It runs all the way, powers everything from Hatch over to Van Horn, includes Holloman Air Force Base, White Sands Missile Range, includes a whole bunch of gas-fired power plants, includes a lot of much smaller solar plants, and serves over 1 million people. Next slide. And that takes 2.9 million tons, or emits 2.9 million tons of CO2. What the data center has applied to emit is 10 million tons. You know, there was an article, Heath Hausman, a couple of days ago that said, Oracle said, oh, we're only gonna emit 18 to 35% we're gonna emit 18 to 35% less than we said we will. Okay, so, you know, let's say we'll take the average of 18 and 35, and that's 26.5%. So let's say we accept their numbers, and they're only gonna emit 7.5 million tons. Well, it's still more than twice as much as El Paso Electric. It's more than all of El Paso Electric, P&M, and Southwest Power Systems that covers the eastern part of the state. It's all more than all the power generation in New Mexico. So it's just, it's a huge amount of carbon dioxide emitted. And if you compare it to the greenhouse gas inventory that was done in Las Cruces, that was less than 1 million tons. So it's, and that covers transportation, building, heating, industry, everything that we could quantify in Las Cruces. So again, it's just a huge amount of carbon dioxide. Next slide. I think I've pretty much covered this. Next slide. So let's talk about solid oxide fuel cells. The project is switching from simple cycle gas turbines to solid oxide fuel cells. So, they are much better for nitrous oxide. It's a win for Colin Cox and the environmental community that really protested what they were going to do. And I think they realized they were not going to get permission to use their gas turbines. But it's still these solid oxide fuel cells, they're a little better in terms of CO2 emissions than the inefficient gas turbines they were going to use. They're worse than a combined cycle gas turbine. They're not a panacea. They kind of fall in between a terrible gas turbine and a better gas turbine. Next slide. One thing that worries me about the solid oxide fuel cells, and I have to admit, I'm not an expert on fuel cells. This is a new thing to me, and unfortunately, when I try to download the Bloom Energy papers, technical papers, they won't let you download it to a Gmail address. You gotta have an industry address. But what worries me is right here, we got natural gas coming in, we got hot steam, there's a steam reformation process here that splits that natural gas, but there's still natural gas right here. This is methane, CH4 natural gas. Well, what happens to that? Is all of that consumed? If it's not consumed, that's a huge worry because methane is much, much worse than CO2 in terms of being a greenhouse gas. Next slide. So let's talk about alternatives. I'm not really going to talk about wind because there's not a lot of wind resources close to the project. But I'm going to talk about these other things. Next slide. Solar, it's just an amazing, as an engineer, it's an amazingly powerful and inexpensive way to generate electricity, especially in this area. But, it doesn't work all the time, so it's a problem. That problem is going away very rapidly with the decrease in prices of battery storage. Which has been called a time machine for electrons. I kind of like that quote. Next slide. So here, the last 10 years, this is what the cost of battery storage has done. That goes to 2024. Last year, it decreased another 27%. So it's just becoming, less and less expensive to pair batteries with storage and generate consistent power. Next slide. Last year, a company called Ember published a really good paper that really quantified in different parts of the world how much solar plus battery you need to have consistent, reliable power. And these are the numbers they come up with. For a 1 gigawatt of load, you need 6 gigawatts of solar panels, 17 gigawatt hours battery capacity, and that gets you up to 97% reliability. If you need 100%, you gotta have some kind of backup, or maybe the data center could accept some occasional blackouts, 3% of the time per year. Next slide. This is starting to talk about what I think might be politically feasible in New Mexico. I personally fear that we will not be able to totally stop the data center. And I'm sure there's a lot of disagreement with that, and I hope you're right that we can stop it. But if we can't stop it, if we cannot stop it, what is possible? Why don't we make the data center meet the same Energy Transition Act requirements as all our other electric utilities? It's so big, it's bigger than all of them combined. Let's hold them to the same standards. So to do that, it would require a lot less, 2.4 gigawatts of solar panels, 9 gigawatt hours. These are still big numbers because it's a huge gas plant we're trying to mitigate. But the cost is relatively low and land is sunny and abundant in that area. Next slide. So how much land? I won't go into these details, but this is the calculation. It comes up with about 19 square miles. So that's 4 miles by 5 miles. It's a lot of land. I've spent some time down there riding my bike around down there. It's degraded creosote desert. It's degraded by overgrazing, as most of the land around here is. So it's not
pristine virgin land that we're talking about here. Next slide. So, couple of options where to get that land. Right now, there's a land exchange in process between the Bureau of Land Management and the State Land Office. The State Land Office is very, very willing and happy to work with solar developers and lease that land for solar. And so the data center is right in here. It's right in this area here, in this white private land. This blue land is what will become state land after the land swap. And these light blue squares are existing state trust land. So that, you remember, 19 square miles was what we need for 50% renewables. This is about 23. So it's possible. Next slide. The BLM has already established what they call a solar energy zone. Las Cruces is up here. The project is down here. So again, 46 square miles, it's plenty of land. This happens to be a big interstate electric transmission line, so there's an opportunity to get that power down to Santa Teresa. Probably have to be upgraded though, because it's just such an enormous amount of power we're talking about. Next slide. Geothermal is really exciting to me. This sort of, how am I doing? Okay. I just put this up to talk about the different technologies. I won't talk about all of them, but this is the technology that I'm kind of excited about because it doesn't require fracking. It recirculates the water, so it does not. It requires one-time fill, but doesn't require replenishment of that water. Next slide. There's a paper came out last year. New Mexico has 163 gigawatts geothermal capacity. XGS company is building a 150 megawatt geothermal plant right now. It's supposed to be coming online in 2029. Next slide. This is the geothermal potential in New Mexico. The colors aren't showing up very good here, but the very highest geothermal potential is this dark brown. There's kind of the number 2, the pretty good geothermal potential right at the project site. There's some really high potential here and here, so that's feasible. Next slide. The BLM is auctioning off, starting June 16th, they're auctioning off all these parcels specifically for geothermal energy. The project again is right here, so it's not that far to some of these geothermal parcels. Next slide. Energy Transition Act. I talked a tiny bit about this. House Bill 93 last year was really a mess, and it was really amendments to it were forced in at the last minute. The legislators did not know what they were voting for. I watched the session on YouTube. Jeff Steinborn tried to get an explanation for what these amendments did, and in my opinion, he was lied to. So anyway, that exemption got into House Bill 93. What it did is it let microgrids sell power to utilities. Well, I should start off initially. Microgrids are not regulated by the Public Regulation Commission because they don't sell power to the public. In my opinion, they're so huge, the impacts are so huge, they need to be regulated. So anyway, this is what House Bill 93 did. It let them profit from selling excess dirty energy to El Paso Electric. It enables El Paso Electric to sell that power and call it green, call it clean. You know, it sort of greenwashes that power and pretends it didn't come from natural gas. Jeff Steinberg did have a Microgrid Oversight Act. Okay, so let me wrap this up, and I am almost done. So, again, political fallback position. If we can't stop this plant, at least let's make them conform to the ETA. Next slide. I think I've probably said most of this. Next slide. This is my references, and we can make this available to anybody. I want it to be clear that I have confidence in all my numbers that I talk about here, and that's it.
We're gonna go into Q&A. We have 10 minutes. Nisha is going to go around and she will have the mic. Like I said, please keep your questions to the point and as concise as possible. Thank you.
There's been some progress in fusion lately that I've read about. Is there any chance that that can happen in a scalable form on the time scale that would be necessary?
I don't know if you heard the question, but the question was about fusion. Is there a possibility that could happen soon enough? You know, in my opinion, not soon enough. I mean, I think the hyperscaler data centers, they want power and they want it right now. And I, you know, fusion is promising, but it seems like it's always a few years away in my experience. So it'd be great, but I don't see it happening soon enough.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Simpson. How do solid oxide fuel cells compare to lithium-ion batteries? I did a little checking online, asking about what kind of batteries that Project Jupiter wants to use, and the answer I got was lithium-ion batteries. Now, you have mentioned solid oxide fuel cells, and quickly I saw the reference that apparently is mentioned in their air quality permit. Do you know how those compare?
Well, they're fundamentally different in that solid oxide fuel cells generate electricity from natural gas. They don't exactly burn it, but they chemically react with it to generate electricity. While lithium-ion batteries, they have to have some kind of source for the electricity, so they're just storing it. They're just shifting it in time. They're storing it when you got extra solar energy, and then you know, distributing it back out at night or when you need it.
So Project Jupiter is not using lithium-ion batteries?
You know, the question is whether Project Jupiter is using lithium-ion batteries. I have heard them say they would, but I have not seen anything in writing or anything official that says they would use batteries.
And online information says they will.
One question at a time, please, sorry.
Back here. Hi, Phil. It's Vince Gucci.
Hi, Vince.
Um,
Fellow engineer.
There's a bait and switch thing here. Okay, solid oxide fuel cells have never been built above 1/10 of a gigawatt capacity. They're not a proven technology. I don't see that they could develop it in time. So they're saying, okay, 30% reduction in CO2 emissions, which is possible. But the other thing that you really pointed out that's great is the rejected, incompletely used methane. So thanks for doing that great job.
Thank you. Yeah, I should highlight what, if you couldn't hear what Vince said, you know, solid oxide fuel cells, they're brand new, they've never been used at this scale. It's really questionable how reliable, how, you know, what's the methane emissions gonna be from them? Yeah, who knows?
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In your chart, you showed that the permit that they're looking for their total electricity demand is gonna be like 21 terawatts for the year?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What size plant are they building in that microgrid to supply? Usually the plants are defined by how many gigawatts per day they can, or max that they can generate.
It's 2.45 gigawatts, 2,450 megawatts,
Okay.
which is, you know, it's more than the gas generation capacity of El Paso Electric, and they run it all the time, which is why emissions are so much more than El Paso Electric.
Hi.
Hi, Glenn.
How you doing?
Good.
Looking at the application for the fuel cells, it seems that all of the CO2 emissions are going to be under control. There's going to be no attempt to capture them and sequester the carbon dioxide. And I wonder, you know, the figures you have about, the figures you have about what they could do, you know, I appreciate that, but I wonder, is there any indication at all from the company that they really care about reducing greenhouse gas?
I haven't seen, I mean, the project, the company, they do put out, you know, public releases. They talked about Project Green, you know, building a lot of solar to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But I don't really see an indication from the company itself or the project that they're really interested or committed to reducing greenhouse emissions. I should mention, you know, Heath Hausman's article a couple days ago, it said that apparently the project is not pursuing Project Green, which was to build a total of a gigawatt of solar anymore. Now that they're you know, have these fuel cells. So yeah, sorry, I wish I had a better view of them.
One thing I've seen mentioned is data centers plugging into the local grid versus having their own grid, and sometimes their own grid is for emergency use, and usually they're using the local grid. Is this microgrid entirely just so they're on their own, or are they also going to plug into local? Is it a mix? I guess I'm kind of curious because I've seen it both ways discussed, at least in other data centers.
I'm curious too. Right now, there doesn't seem to be any indication that they're going to connect to the El Paso Electric grid. I mean, I think it would make a lot of sense for them to connect, but right now it doesn't. And when I say sense, I mean economic sense to them. But I don't see any indication that they are going to connect to El Paso Electric grid, other than the fact that they inserted this language into House Bill 93 last year to make it economically profitable for them to do so. So that, to me, that indicates there's some intent, or at least some, you know, they're thinking about connecting to El Paso Electric grid, and how can they make more money off of that.
Thanks for being here. When you mentioned 10 million tons that they'll be using it versus Las Cruces uses 0.9, is that per day?
I'm sorry, that's per year. 10 million tons of CO2 per year from the project, and 0.9 from Las Cruces.
Last question.
Okay, so this might be kind of basic, but I'm just wondering, what electricity source are they using right now in construction, and does that affect our rates at all? As folks, as many of us are consumers of El Paso Electric.
Yeah, good question. I imagine they have to be using El Paso Electric power right now for construction.
And whether, right, I mean, I doubt right now it has much of an effect on our rates, but I haven't really looked at that specifically.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. Sorry, folks. I know not all the questions got to be answered, and sorry we have the limited time. But our next presenter is Colin Cox, and they'll be coming in via Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just getting silence on your end, but I'll take that thumbs up to mean I'm good to go. Cool. Yeah, I can't hear anything at all. Oh, there, I heard that.
Yeah, we can hear you, Colin.
Okay, great. I've got a little just a few PowerPoint slides. Should I put those up from
Yeah.
here? Would that work?
Yes.
Okay. One moment. Can you give me screen sharing privileges? Awesome. Okay. Does that work? Can you see this slide? Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Oh, but it's doing presenter mode. There, how's that?
No, it's the same thing.
Oh.
Good, yeah, better.
Okay, cool.
Colin, can you introduce yourself first?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so hi, good afternoon. I'm Colin Cox. I'm an attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity on our New Mexico team. I live in northern New Mexico outside of Santa Fe. I'm sorry I'm not with you all today, but thanks for letting me kind of remote in. At the center, we've been doing a lot of work around Project Jupiter and some of the various like state and federal permits that they need. So I was going to talk about those three things. I'll be pretty brief this morning, and I'm happy to answer questions. Mostly around the power plant. So I'm going to talk about the air pollution permit that they need, the pipeline that they're proposing to build to get the gas to the power plant, and water well drilling permit that they applied for with the office of the state engineer, which isn't just about that power plant, it's also for construction and other water. I'll jump into it. So Project Jupiter, is proposing to do this kind of microgrid thing where they're building their own power plant to provide all their own power. It's like everything else enormous. It's going to be 2,462 megawatts of capacity is their latest application. They've had a couple of different applications, thanks in part, anyway, we'll talk more about that in a minute. But this is huge, right? 2,400 megawatts is just bigger than any power plant in New Mexico. To give you kind of a sense of scale, the entire El Paso electric grid is around 2,900 megawatts. The entire PNM grid is around 2,700 megawatts. So this is like on the order of, this enough power for literally millions of people, of households. It's huge. And it's all from methane. It's all fossil fuels. It's all a climate disaster. And then my contact info is down there at the bottom of the slide, but I'll have it on the last slide too. So the first kind of piece of this that we started working on several months ago is the air pollution permit for the power plant. So originally they were going to build a bunch of gas turbines, which is kind of a pretty standard way to do this, that would release quite a lot of pollution. More than 7,000 people commented on the air permits. They withdrew that turbine application, but then put forward a new application just about a month ago based on what they call fuel cells. It's a much newer technology. It still releases a lot of the same pollutants as turbines. It's less polluting than the turbines, but it still releases, like there's a list here, so nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, and then hazardous air pollutants, which is kind of a class of things that include like benzene and xylene.
relatively small amounts, but still significant when you have this many of them, this many, this big of a power plant. Nitrogen oxides also contribute to ozone formation or smog, so it's likely to make ozone problems like in El Paso or in Sunland Park area of New Mexico make those worse. And then the big thing, I think that the biggest number, of course, is greenhouse gases. So this is a lot of carbon monoxide. It's burning methane, and the carbon in the methane has to go somewhere and goes into the sky. And so talking about 20 billion pounds of methane per year, up to that much. That's more greenhouse gas, 20 billion pounds of carbon dioxide. That's more greenhouse gases than like New Mexico's 3 biggest cities combined, Albuquerque, Las Cruces, and Santa Fe. It's huge. And I think that's an enormous, it's a climate disaster. You've probably already heard that today. So to build their power plant, they have to get an air pollution permit from the New Mexico Environment Department. The company, the shell company that's applying for this permit is Yucca Growth Infrastructure LLC. They used to be called Acoma LLC until the governor of the Pueblo of Acoma kind of put them on blast publicly. And they quickly changed their name to kind of another New Mexico cultural appropriation, but less offensive, I guess. It's air permit number 10883 with the New Mexico Environment Department. This is just kind of some basic info up here. Like I mentioned, they had another air permit in January. 7,000 people commented on it, opposed to it. A few people commented in favor of it out of the 7,000, mostly organizations and people who were standing to benefit from it. And they withdrew that, in response to the public comments, they withdrew that application and came back with this newer one that's still really problematic. On this new application from Yucca Growth Infrastructure, the public comment period is probably going to start as early as the end of next week, but maybe the week or two after that. We don't know exactly, but it'll be sometime soon. They'll start a 30-day public comment period. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but essentially, anyone can send comments in on this, and we can ask for a hearing where we would, have basically a court battle about the air permit. At the Center for Biological Diversity, I'm intending to file comments. I'm intending to ask for a hearing and kind of take that dispute it goes first to the Environmental Improvement Board, and depending on how that goes, then it can proceed to district court. So we're intending to engage on this fight for the air permit, but other folks can too. It's not, you don't have to be a lawyer. Just send comments and you can do it online. So what are some kind of the main issues that I've seen with the power plant permit as I've been looking at it? I think the first one, like I said, 20 billion pounds per year of greenhouse gases is just really offensive in 2026 as we deal with the worst drought that we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And it's only going to get worse, and that's because of greenhouse gases. So building a methane-powered plant of this size in 2026 just seems ludicrous to me. Another kind of big issue is that this, like I said, this is not turbines like the original proposal was. This is these kind of methane fuel cell things. So it's not actually burning the methane, but it's using steam reformation to pull off the hydrogen atom from the methane and then combine that hydrogen with oxygen to generate electricity. So it's a chemical reaction. It's not technically combustion, but it's not that different from combustion. It has a lot of the same waste products, mostly greenhouse gases. But this company, these fuel cells are coming from this company called Bloom Energy, and it's unproven at this kind of scale. Bloom has built some power plants before. This facility is 1,000 times bigger than anything Bloom has built. The pollution numbers that we have in the air permit, I don't know how good they are. I really question their reliability. They're based on an emissions test of a tiny unit, a 65 kilowatt unit. The power plant they're proposing to build is 37,000 times larger than the unit that they were testing for pollution. Is it true that it's just going to be 37,000 times as much as came out of that little unit? Maybe. But how do these things act at scale? Just kind of on that point, these are all the slides, but the consultant, Trinity Consultants, who put this air permit together, added kind of a 15% safety margin for the pollution limits. which is not, and I've worked on air permits for a decade. It's not something they normally do if they're confident in their numbers. And it's like, oh, we take our pollution numbers, let's just give ourselves a 15% buffer on top of that. That's, I find that unusual and concerning. Another question is we don't know how much water this is going to use. I just don't know how much water this power plant will use right now. And the company has told us it's going to be used less than the turbines. That's the only word we have. And the last issue I kind of want to mention is hazardous waste. So these fuel cells, they're in the gas that comes down the pipeline. There's sulfur compounds and some other compounds that would cause a lot of problems in the fuel cell. So they basically get filtered out into kind of a separate canister. That's hazardous waste. Sulfur is very hazardous, and there's other stuff in there too. There's benzene and potentially some other things in this hazardous waste. Where's that going to go, and what's the plan for that? We haven't heard or seen anything about that yet. What we do know is that Bloom, the maker of these fuel cells, has been fined by the Environmental Protection Agency for violating hazardous waste laws because of its processing and transportation of these canisters that are full of hazardous waste that it originally claimed weren't hazardous waste. It's been fined by EPA for kind of mishandling those and not following hazardous waste regulations in Delaware and in Maryland, and that was in 2020. First they paid a $200,000 fine, and then EPA came back and said you owe us another, $1.1 million for after they kind of finished auditing what they've been doing. So yeah, I don't know what the hazardous waste plan is for this, and I think we deserve to know what's going on there. So that's basically it on the pipeline. Maybe I'll just kind of blow through these things kind of quickly, and then I can take questions on anything else that's the air permit. The next piece that they need is this pipeline. It's about an 18-mile section of pipeline. I hope you can see the map here. It's kind of starting outside roughly like La Mesa, and then going 18 miles south to the Project Jupiter site. It's a 24-inch pipeline just to bring methane to power all those fuel cells that we're talking about. The company is Energy Transfer Partners. It's kind of a sub-company of that is Transwestern Pipeline, but it's Energy Transfer Partners. We probably heard of. They're very litigious and they build pipelines all over the country. They're claiming they're trying to get an expedited review of the permits to get the authorization for this, claiming that kind of under Trump's energy emergency executive orders, and also under kind of national defense emergency issues that we need AI to kind of power our war machine. We have to win the AI race. So that's why they're trying to, that's how they're kind of the grounds they're using to try to justify expediting the approval of this. And it's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that governs pipeline permits, so that's who ultimately will make this decision. I'm also challenging this at the center, and my colleagues, Sarah and Gail, are working with others. Also, I should say the center's not doing any of this alone. We're working with a lot of people. There's a broad coalition of opposition for this. But I can tell you kind of what I'm doing. So yeah, we're challenging this at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And one good piece of news is that the state land office has refused to give Energy Transfer Partners the right-of-way access over any state land that this pipeline would cross, which has potentially slowed it down a little bit, but we're not sure. They could reroute around to use federal land instead of state land, maybe, but that's an ongoing dispute. So our state land office has been trying to kind of protect the environment from these impacts. And this challenge is also ongoing. And in fact, at the center, we are kind of looking for, and I'll talk a little bit about this at the end, but we're also looking for, if there are people who live along this pipeline route who would be affected by it, can be affected by environmental impacts or impacts to their property or land. I'd be interested to talk to you if you wanted to kind of join our fight. But let's give you that pitch at the end. So then the third piece I wanted to mention is water use. So Jupiter is currently kind of for construction purposes at least, buying water, just instead of transferring water rights, which requires some oversight in New Mexico to sort of bypass that process. It's just buying water from this company, Santa Teresa Capital LLC, that owns water rights in the area. The water right that they're using, that they're buying from, is good for up to 20 pumping groundwater for 2,400 acre feet per year. That's about 780 million gallons per year, about 2 million gallons per day. That's what they're allowed to pump. I'm not saying that's what Jupiter is using. We don't actually know what they're using. Some of that water also goes to the sod farm that's a little bit north of the Jupiter water site. Although that sod farm has pretty low water usage, much lower than 2,400 acre feet. And so one thing the Jupiter developers had done is they needed to drill a new well to pump the water that they're currently using on the construction site. So they applied to the Office of the State Engineer to drill a new well. And again, they claimed an emergency. This time they claimed serious economic harm with the result that they weren't allowed to drill their well before going through the protest process. So normally in New Mexico, if you wanted to transfer water rights or drill a well, people who are going to be affected by that can file protests. And you have to go through the protest process, which could take a year or two before you get to transfer the right. But they've bypassed that with this saying there is an economic emergency for them. So they've already drilled the well, they're already pumping water, and the protest hasn't even started. We filed a protest on this along with many community members and some other organizations back in January. And we don't even have the protest hasn't even begun. So then this is also something that we're also looking if there are local folks. Oh, are you trying to talk to me, Daisy?
Yes, that's unfortunately your time, so.
Okay, that's fine. So, last thing, what things you can do, you can comment on the air pollution permit application at NMED online. That'll probably go up in a few weeks. If you're affected by the pipeline or the water pumping, you're welcome to contact me. My email address and phone number are here. I'd be happy to talk to you about what we're working on. And thank you so much. And yeah, happy to take any questions. Perfect.
Oh, there it's good. Okay. So we're gonna go into the Q&A. Just a reminder, if you can please keep it limited to one question. If you have follow-up questions, please hold off until the very end because there may not be time for everybody to get to their question, and please keep your question concise to the point. Thank you.
Check, I'm gonna use this not great mic because the other one ran out of batteries.
I presume that the water is used for cooling, and if so, why couldn't they use the highly salted water at the bottom of the aquifer?
So the question is, why aren't they using the water brackish water?
At the bottom of the aquifer.
At the bottom of the aquifer for cooling. Did you hear that, Colin?
Yeah, I don't know. I think one of the reasons I suspect one of the reasons they're doing the water the way they're doing it is they didn't want to have to buy a whole water right for themselves. They didn't want to have to go through the kind of notice and protest and hearing process that they would if they were trying to kind of develop their own water right or put in a new well. So instead they kind of did this emergency thing where they could replace a well that's within 100 feet of an existing well that belongs to an existing water rights holder. And through this, that's the quickest, probably for them, the quickest way they could do to get water. And then the hearing happens later, meanwhile, they're just pumping as much as they need, again, up to quite a lot. Long term, they might have a different plan, but I don't, this probably works fine for them. They're getting the water they want right now, and they could pump up to in theory, up to 2 million gallons a day with the current, under what for them is the status quo. So that looks like, I think, the easiest, fastest path to get water. And I disagree with the emergency and the way that they've done that, and we're trying to challenge that. But yeah, that's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next question.
Hi, so that area, that particular area is prone to having arsenic in the groundwater. CRUA had tested above maximum contaminant levels as of recent, and there was the whole blow up with the CRUA utility. Do you happen to know if they're going to be, are they extracting the arsenic? Are they treating the water? How is that impacting the workers that are out there? You know, is there a plan in place?
Did you get that question about arson? Yeah.
I heard that, yeah. So I don't have any information about how they're treating or using the water once they're pumping it. I do know this is kind of a similar, the well at the same location and depth has been used to water the sod farm. I don't know how much sod responds. I don't know about what they're doing kind of after pumping.
Okay,
I-
thank you. Next question.
I have a question. So you were saying that they're currently limited to 2 million gallons per day, but we're not measuring it. So what is stopping them from going over that limit if that is in fact, they don't seem to adhere to any rules?
Yeah, did you get that question?
Sorry.
Okay, so the well permission, that water right that they're using is allowing them to, or would allow them to pump up to 2 million gallons a day, but we don't know how much they're actually pumping because it's not being measured, right? So how do we know? Or
Yeah,
Right.
we don't currently know. That is a metered pump, and they will be posting, they will have to report to the Office of the State Engineer how much they're pumping on a monthly basis, and we'll have access to that, but there's a lag. So I know they're already pumping. In like a couple of months, we might know what they're pumping now, if that makes sense. We'll always be a couple months behind on the data. But we will start to have some numbers soon. I checked a couple days ago and they still just have their kind of like testing pump numbers. So they haven't, but we will find out. We will know. It could be up to 2 million. I don't think they're pumping that much right now. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't even know if they can through the well, but they can pump a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Colin, can I just ask real quick? Sorry, I'm taking over this follow-up question on that. So when did they, because they got the immediate approval on that application. So was that in November that they received that approval? Right?
Yeah. I believe that approval came in a while back, but I think they didn't drill the well until later.
Okay. Okay. Next question.
Hello. My question is like, besides commenting on the with that link right there, or if we're affected, contacting you, do we have any other political avenues to fight this thing? Like, is there any like people in that like run the permitting that we can talk to like maybe have them like stop this thing?
Did you get the question about other legal avenues to challenge this as citizens and residents, and in particular around permitting? I see.
Yeah, so there are, I presented kind of 3 challenges that we're currently involved in, the air permit, and that's something that anyone can get involved in, and I would encourage people to voice their concerns when that goes public. Should be soon, sometime in June probably, maybe next week. The water permit challenge that we talked about it's already too late to kind of join that part, but we are looking for people. It's not actually if you're kind of work with me or someone existing, that'd be one potential way to get involved in the water drilling permit. It's too late to file a new challenge, but if you join an organization, we can talk about that. The pipeline is at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That process is kind of also sort of closed. It's also really that's the most complicated one to navigate, and it's not really public friendly, and there's not a lot of public comment. There used to be more, right? But the Trump administration has really kind of fast-tracked projects and removed a lot of public participation opportunities. So that process, it's never been easy, but it used to be more open to the public. It's definitely less open to the public now under Trump, and moving faster. Those are the things I'm aware of. you know, I haven't done any work at the county level and kind of county level permits. That's not I don't have experience with that. Yeah, so those are the three things I've got. I don't have other ones that I know of.
We have 90 seconds and 3 more questions over here.
Okay.
Hello, Colin. You were talking about the new well they drilled. My question is there any data in the state engineer's website that shows any like how the depth or location of that well is? And my concern for that is in Georgia, they have a data center that has low water pressure, and I'm assuming it's due to the cone of depression. So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, so questions about, do we know if there's any data that's been submitted to the state engineer's office about the location of the well and the depth of the well?
Yeah, I have all that. I don't want to waste your time. If you give me 30 seconds, I can pull it up, but also I can send it to you later. What would you prefer?
Okay, so we'll follow up, so you can follow up with folks on that information.
Yeah.
Mr. Cole.
So, okay, so I have another question for you. Given that the well was drilled under emergency status, did not give the opportunity to open for protest, is there going to be a window for protest at some point, and will that what kind of a perimeter are we looking at? What the radius and the extent to which, because if they're gonna be drilling that amount of water, they're gonna be affecting a lot of the other straws that are in the ground. Is there going to be a protest period at any point?
Yeah, so the question was about the protest period for this emergency well.
It did, yeah. So they filed their application in like November, and the protests on the emergency well were due in January of this year, like January 9th or something. I think they were trying to schedule things so everything was happening over the Christmas break. I spent most of my Christmas break writing water permit or drilling permit challenges and the air permit challenge. Not very nice of them, but I think it may not have been intentional.
Yeah, right, so folks can't join.
But it's too late to file that protest.
Okay.
Yeah, so folks can't file a new protest, but if you are affected by that and you're really concerned about it, you could call me, because we're looking for other ways to challenge this, to challenge the whole emergency use period, rather than waiting kind of 2 years to go through the protest. And so if you're affected by that pumping or nearby, let me know. There may be other ways we're investigating other avenues to challenge the water use.
Last question.
Okay, hi. I apologize if you addressed this and I missed it, but given the enormous quantity of methane that we're talking about that Jupiter requires, is this going to demand further drilling in the Permian Basin? I would assume that the gas that's now produced is contractually committed.
Yeah, so the question is about, would this require more drilling in the Permian Basin to extract or to bring the methane through here to use for the engine generation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't have a great answer for that. I expect no. Right now, the natural methane is a kind of byproduct of oil drilling, and they don't even have enough kind of pipeline capacity for all the methane that they're generating. So a lot of methane in the Permian just gets flared or vented, both of which are illegal, but it happens constantly, right? You just have to drive for 3 minutes in the Permian and you can see it for yourself. And if you have one of those infrared cameras, you can just see the methane just floating up out of pipes. So, in some ways, this could be a way. One of the reasons the state might be encouraging methane-based projects like this is that we have too much methane in the Permian, and so if they burn it in a power plant, then they can claim that those are like power sector or data center greenhouse gas pollution and not oil development greenhouse gas pollution like it currently is. That might be one way for them to sort of shift the numbers around on the books to make it look like our oil industry is less greenhouse gas intensive than it really is. But at that point, that's kind of my speculation. And to an earlier question, the well is about 700 feet deep. And it's located right in the middle of the sod farm in one of the 3 green circles if you look on Google Maps. But I can share that. I'll share that with you later.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so we're done with that.
Is this? Yeah, all right. So, sorry, we're done with questions for Colin. Oh, for me? Okay. Can we?
Is this going to be posted online?
Yeah, we'll be posting this online as well.
It's live streamed right now.
Yeah, it's being live streamed right now. But yeah, so we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break. If you need water, if you need bathroom, we're gonna give our presenters a chance to like stretch their legs as well. We have 2 more who will be presenting, and then that will be the end of our we have the 2 more presenting, then we'll go into a general sort of forum, and then that will be the end. Thank you.
So 2:30.
Yep.
Yeah.
To meet your neighbor, if you haven't met your neighbor, and also you want to stick around because the last 2 speakers are the hottest topics, which are AI and water. So come back.
You want a burrito too, though. Why did you invite someone else?
Because you left it.
No, I didn't make it.
Oh, it was my burrito?
Yeah. I still have it. Sorry. You're gonna go talk to Phil. We're done with it.
The thing is, like, when I hear stuff, I want it to be correct because it's easily picked apart. But I fully support this, so I don't want to like be disagreeable. And I don't like challenge me. But
Well, I think it's good that you didn't do that in front of everyone. But like, so his proposition that it could be run on batteries or whatever.
no, and if you need some other electrical storage. But honestly, any senior at NMSU could do for their senior project. Like this is a thing that they do on paper all the time. So no, definitely not batteries. But like, for example, the way to store energy is to like pump water high. I mean, when you want to use energy, you let it burn down. Like, lots of shit. People melt salt so that they store it in heat and they can use that to generate steam. Like, there's a shit ton of ways to do this that have been done many times over. Batteries are, batteries are not the way of the future. They're brutal in our environment and on our politics. Fuel cells are actually the way of the future. In my opinion. Anyway, I could engineer it. Yeah, when it's not, that's another thing, I think, I don't know if this guy said, this is new technology, no, this is not a new technology, it's been around for a long time. What is new is a scale. Fuel cells can be the cleanest thing because you can use hydrogen, like you said, combined with water, and you get water. Water is the waste product of stuff like hydrogen. I think that is the greatest option, that and nuclear are the greatest option. I could go on and rant about it. I support it, you know.
Sorry, I have Pharrell over me from home.
I do.
Not yet. She still has to well, because she's actually smelling something. She's nibbled a little bit. But she's had a fever. They have to keep her sterilized. I don't know, they haven't had an x-rays or anything
I would offer to take you somewhere, but I really want to see the.
Well, I can't grab my Why not?
I love my bread. Oh, yeah, right?
I'm so sad.
And,
I understand why.
Did you have fun?
It's time. Is Marzier online? Can you guys trickle in into your seats? Pretty please. So we can learn about AI. I hope you got a cutie or some water. Thank you again, Phil, and Colin, and everyone who's asked the questions so far.
I'm so curious about this.
Alrighty, if we could please make our way back to our seats. I hope you all got a chance to get some water, get some snacks, maybe chat with your neighbor a little bit.
I fully support this effort. I didn't want to be a contrarian or anything, but I believe that batteries are a viable solution, are a viable solution going forward.
Give us just a few more minutes to settle down, settle in, and get ready.
But I mean, simple things like pumping water to high plates or molten salt. There's so many storage possibilities.
No worries.
It's hard to just go by. Right. But I mean, any engineering student at MSU could design it on paper for their senior project. Like these are basically solved problems. Yeah. But because they have to be engineered. But at the time that the solar installation happens, that's time.
Alrighty.
Anyway,
So if we can quiet down, please. That way we can hear our presenter. Our next presenter is Dr. Marcia Gassemi. I think I said that right. I'm really sorry if I said it incorrectly. And if you can please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, so you can get started and if you could please introduce yourself.
Sure. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Marcia Gassemi. I am a professor of electrical engineering and computer science and at the Institute for Medical Engineering and Sciences at MIT. I grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I went to New Mexico State University as an undergraduate. My sister still lives in the area, as do my nieces, so I have a strong connection to New Mexico, which is part of why I agreed to talk today. And so you heard a little bit about these data centers and sort of the cost of the data centers, but you might be asking yourself like, okay, they're spending all that money, like of course, there must be something like really impressive they're gonna give us with all of that, resource. If they're taking all of our water and all of our electricity and like making the air unbreathable, there must be something that they're gonna give us, right? So today I'm gonna talk to you about sort of a very active area of debate and research in machine learning about what is ethical machine learning. And to do this, first I'm going to say briefly, my lab at MIT is called the Healthy Machine Learning Lab. We focus on how you make models that work for all people, because the majority of machine learning models built today do not, something that is conveniently sort of not mentioned in a lot of product information that has AI in it. I focus specifically on trying to understand if there are good ways of evaluating health AI in health settings, so for predicting sepsis early or detecting who might need more support in pregnancy, things like this. But today I want to start with a demonstrative example, and I'm going to start with this example because it's the real example that one of the clinicians I work with gave me. And MIT is right across the bridge from this big hospital, Mass General, and so this doctor from Mass General said, if I have a patient who's having trouble breathing and they come into the emergency room and I give them a chest x-ray, we have a ton of universities here in Boston, and so there are a lot of students. And so if you're there for a Friday night, it could be hours, multiple hours before a doctor is actually going to look at your chest x-ray. But you don't want to wait around in a hospital, no matter your condition or age, if you don't have to, because as we all know, there's lots of things that can spread in hospitals, right? There's SARS, MRSA, COVID, I heard the plague is back. So, you don't want to wait in a hospital if you don't want to. So the question these doctors have for me is, can you just build an AI model to triage patients? And if they're healthy, then we can send them home. And the answer to this is yes. I'm going to tell you, if somebody asks you or me or anybody, can you build model A to predict thing B? As long as you have enough data, the answer is yes. Okay, so that's not a question anymore. That was a question when I started my PhD a long time ago, but it is not a question now. Our models are good enough. And so as long as you pick a problem, step one, and we already picked ours, right? Like this chest x-ray triage thing. As long as you have enough data and an outcome that you can define, you can develop an algorithm to deploy it. Okay, this is what everybody does. It's a simple pipeline. We all do it. I'm going to walk you through how I did it for this model-based chest x-ray diagnosis task. Okay, this project for my friend at Mass General. First, we need data. Did you know that there are over 700,000 publicly available chest x-rays on the internet, just of Americans? And so I downloaded those, right? I use a big data set, 700,000 chest x-rays from 3 different sites in America. That's great. And then I trained a kind of convolutional neural network, which is a neural network that works well on images, right? So it's set up so that it classifies images really well. And I'm training that model to predict no finding. Why am I training it to predict no finding? Because remember, the task here is to predict if somebody's healthy. I don't want to predict if they have pneumonia, pneumothorax, cardiomegaly, a fracture, none of that. I want to predict no finding. They're healthy. They can go home. And when I do that, when I optimize this deep neural network on 700,000 chest x-rays, I get a model that when I show it new chest x-rays from Mass General can predict correctly at a rate of 0.859. And so here, 0.5 is random and 1 is perfect. You should never get either of those. No model should be a coin flip. And no model should also be perfect because the underlying data isn't perfect, right? We believe that there are some mistakes in all human data. Not every doctor is right. And so if this model was right 100% of the time, we'd be a little bit worried. Like, why are you mimicking it so perfectly? And so this is a really good result. We published this paper in Nature Medicine, which is a fancy journal. And 0.859 means that approximately 85% of the time this thing is right. It does a good job. That's great. But it's not just me who does stuff like this, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we should deploy it. You might be thinking the way I was thinking, like, well, 700,000 chest X-rays, an AUC of 0.859, that's super impressive. But there's been a lot of research, and none of these papers are my papers, across both discriminative tasks, which means predicting something important, and generative tasks, which means generating new data, that have shown that machine learning models are really good. And none of these have been deployed yet. And if we look at over the past, this is only since 2022, right, through 2024, if we look at this trend, all of these AI models, you've probably seen this in the news, they're getting better and better and better and better, right? They're these performance advice givers, they're so good, they're so good. And it's not just the researchers like me who are saying, wow, these systems are really good, it's also the FDA. The FDA actually has a program called Software as a Medical Device, where they will look at your software and they will say, oh, it's good enough, you could maybe deploy this in a hospital. And you can see that this is true for, at this point, several hundred different kinds of AI systems in health, and that this is across many different subspecialties. So it's not just like chest x-rays and radiology like I told you, it's like many of these other areas as well. So now let's go back to my application. Maybe with all of that data that I just showed you, systems are better and better, the FDA says you can deploy them, you're thinking, well, that sounds pretty good. This paper that I wrote, it's really good, right? Let's do a really simple check. Let's do a check that's not required by the FDA or by most hospitals before they deploy these systems, okay? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to check this model's false positive rate. What is a false positive for detecting if somebody's healthy? It means your model says that this person is healthy, but that's false. It made a mistake, which is fine, it's not perfect, but it specifically made an underdiagnosis mistake. It said that somebody was healthy and they could just go home even though they were actually sick, okay? And I'm going to examine that false positive rate in different groups of people, just to see if it's different. Because when I told you this magical, AUC 0.859, it was one number for everybody. So let's just check. What we find is that this model, this state-of-the-art AI system trained on over 700,000 chest x-ray images, has the largest underdiagnosis rate in female patients, young patients, Black patients, and patients on Medicaid insurance. And you might notice if you're looking at these bars where higher is worse, because that means your false positive rate is worse. If you, for example, are a intersectional identity, so here, if you are a Black or Hispanic female patient, your underdiagnosis rate is much higher than if you're just a white female patient. And so as you add more intersectional identities here, these models get worse and worse and worse in a way that is never reported. And so I'm going to talk to you really briefly, not about problems in this entire pipeline that can lead to these mistakes. I'm just going to talk to you about one, how this can happen because of data, and why you can't just build fancier models to fix it. This is kind of how these models are made, and anybody who tells you differently either doesn't make them or doesn't understand them. And the reason that this is such a problem in healthcare is because of something called a shortcut bias, okay? And if you haven't heard of a shortcut bias, that's okay, we all do it. If you were looking out the window right now and I asked you, you saw a small animal, and I asked you, do you think it's a dog, or do you think it's like a fox of some kind? If you're in the city, you'd probably say, well, I can't make out the animal, but I know I'm in the city, and so it's definitely a fox. Or sorry, it's definitely a dog, it's definitely not a fox. If you were in a wooded environment, you would say, oh, it's probably a fox, whether you could see the animal or not. And to make that decision, you're looking at the background. You're sort of using the fact that, well, there's very infrequently a fox in a city environment or a dog in a wooded environment, right? And that's what models do too. They take the statistical biases they've learned from every picture you've ever uploaded to the internet ever, because these companies don't represent or respect copyright, they're being sued for that right now. And then they predict what the animal is. In this case, the model's really sure it's a cow. Or in this case, this model's really sure that this mole, my mole, is benign. But if I put this cow on a beach, the model thinks it's an orca. And if I take, you think I'm lying, I'm not. And if I take my mole and just have my kids draw some marker around it, the model thinks it's cancerous. What's happening here? Well, there aren't that many pictures of cows frolicking on the beach, right? And so the model is like, must be an orca. Like, there's a large black and white thing and it's in the water, and I'm so overwhelmed by the fact that I've never seen a cow in water, so it must be an orca. And people, most of the time, don't take photos of their moles and upload them online with marker. In fact, the only time that most people have marker near a mole is when a dermatologist is watching it. right? Because it might be cancerous. And so these models don't understand that there is some causal reason that you have, these marks on your skin, like my kid's just drawing on my mole with marker. They've just seen this statistical correlation in the data that's online, which is billions and billions of pictures, but still has these sort of biases. So this is kind of funny because it's a cow on a beach, cute, right? But what if I told you that models could secretly detect other features about you that no human could, human doctors can't, and then they could use those secret detected features to only predict incorrectly, cow on a beach is not a cow, about certain humans. That feature is actually your demographics. So if you take redacted medical notes, models can predict with extremely high accuracy everything about you. Your gender, your self-reported race, everything about your sociodemographics, and doctors can't. We tested them. Models can also look at your chest x-ray and predict your sex, your race, your age, lots of things about you. And we tested radiologists, they can't do this either. So models have this superhuman capacity to unpack your demographics from your medical data that doctors don't. So if you're a radiologist, you don't see the patient, they just send you a chest x-ray. They have no idea who you are. They don't look through your record, right? The model knows exactly who you are. And so we wanted to test what happens when we have models that are being trained to predict disease, but they can secretly encode all of the demographics about a patient, even if we don't want them to. We tested this in 3 medical settings for chest x-rays in radiology, on these retinal images for ophthalmology, and then on moles for dermatology. And what we found is that when we train these neural networks, these convolutional neural networks that are good with images, to predict who is going to get a disease best on average, they secretly learn who different patients are based on this, the medical data we give them. And that's fine on its own. Who cares if they're learning who is who, and humans can't do that. What matters is that we showed that 2 things are correlated. The more a model can detect who you are, male or female, for example, the more biased it is, the worse it is at predicting the disease you trained it to predict in the minority group, in this case, female patients. What does that mean in practice? That means that when you train these models using the normal way we all train models, called empirical risk randomization, or ERM, you get models that live up here in this upper right-hand corner. On the x-axis, this is how all these models do on average. On the y-axis, this is how unfair they are for any 2 groups. And here I'm showing you chest x-ray disease prediction across patients at different ages, where younger patients and older patients, I'm comparing how much the model fails in these 2 different groups. And you can see these models do really well on average. Remember that result of like 0.845 is pretty good. But they also are 20% less fair. They are wrong 20% more of the time in predicting this chest x-ray condition in younger patients, which is really bad. You would not deploy a model like this. But if you choose other ways of optimizing, so for example, here in the bottom right-hand corner, I use a robust optimizer, which is sort of a new way of optimizing models, the fanciest way that I could try to force it to be fair. Then you can pick a model that has a very low fairness gap, no more than 5%, so that's within noise, just predicting slightly differently, and it does really well on average. So maybe you're thinking this is really good news. This means if we could just force machine learning companies to report their performance across all of these different subgroups, then we could do really well and we could actually help with prediction in healthcare settings, right? But these results are what happens when I take the data from a hospital in Massachusetts, I train it on patients from that hospital, and then I test it on new patients for that hospital. Is that how all models are trained and tested? No. If a model is going to be deployed in New Mexico, you'd probably buy it from one of these big tech companies. They're not training on patients from New Mexico. They don't have anybody from Las Cruces or El Paso or Albuquerque in their data set. They're training it on data from these large academic medical centers. So what happens when I take this model that does super well, that I forced to be fair in Massachusetts patients, very large sample of patients, and now I test it in California? California is actually pretty similar to Massachusetts in some ways, especially in the college town I'm testing in, and in Stanford. What happens then is this model fails. It suddenly becomes much less fair, and it suddenly becomes much worse on average for all patients. And so there's no way to force a model to work well for new people. You can't just use a fancier architecture unless you're also evaluating it in the setting that's going to be deployed in. And so the first lesson, and I don't have time to go through the other lessons, but this is maybe the lesson that I really want you to drive home, is human data is really tricky. You have to test models on data from the populations they'll be used on. Do not be fooled by somebody who says, I trained this fancy neural network on 700,000 patients in Massachusetts, a huge sample. I just showed you that it fails. And if you try to deploy these models in patients in New Mexico, they will fail even worse. Because not only is this a shift across, a coast to a coast into college towns, it's also in New Mexico a shift across environment, across population dynamics, across age and ethnicity distributions. And so we don't expect that any of these models will actually be able to benefit New Mexicans unless they are trained and evaluated first on New Mexicans, which they're not. And that's all I have time to cover today, but I'm happy to talk more about how bad they are later. Thank you.
If you guys don't mind, I actually have a question for Dr. Mizia. My question really quick is, can this information be generalized to, like these lessons about AI predictive models for medical settings be generalized to AI predictive models in law enforcement and military settings?
I don't know if there are questions, I can't hear any.
Yeah. So, we're typing those questions in the chat.
Oh, cool,
Yeah,
okay.
so the first question is.
Oh, I see. So can this information be generalized to AI predictive models and law enforcement and military settings? Yes. Why do you think that the US military double tapped a little girl's school in Iran on the first day of the strikes? They were using an AI system with bad data, and they killed over 160 little girls. That's what our tax dollars are being spent on right now, by the way. Like bad AI systems that don't work for most people and cause massive civilian casualties when applied to war. Not on, for example, investing in our public health infrastructure.
Next question.
Professor, in looking at your results, I didn't see the baseline for your models. And I guess the question I have is, how do those models compare in their accuracy compared to physicians who actually make the diagnoses?
Baseline. Because when you train a model, how do you know? Not just healthcare, I'm talking about healthcare, but think about policing, think about education, think about finance, right? In all of these things, the reason you know it's right is you compare to what the physicians actually did, or what the police actually did, what the bank manager, teacher actually did. Who believes that doctors are always right every single time you've interacted with them? Or police, or educators, or any of the people who make decisions? They're not, right? But we're assuming when we value people that create the data, that the data that's actually there, that's the thing that we want to emulate forever. That in and of itself is problematic, right? What we would really like to do is go through all of the medical records, have doctors at the hospital say, oh, this record, that was bad, that was medical malpractice, don't do that one. Like, don't have the model predict like that, this was wrong, this was wrong. Doctors will not do that. Liability. Right? I mean, I don't know how many, are there any doctors in the room? I have lots of friends who are doctors, so I know all of the ins and outs. Like, doctors operate like a cartel. How many doctors get trained every year? It's controlled by the American Medical Association, so they control the supply. Doctors also get to decide when somebody's committed malpractice. They have, this internal adjudication. Also, when you go, when there's been a complaint and you go to the state medical board for licensing, do you know who's on that board? Other doctors who you went to medical school with. there's very little policing of doctors. I mean, like, it's actually very difficult to, maybe you've seen all these like Netflix documentaries like Dr. Death. Like, why do you think there's a Dr. Death? Because if a hospital realizes that a doctor has been killing patients, you know, maybe all the female patients that they've seen for the past few years, they won't bring a case against that doctor because then they're liable. They'll actually just quietly encourage that doctor to leave, and then they won't ever audit their records. And so what we're doing is saying the human systems that we have, that we're recording data about, so the way that we have policed for the past 10 years, the way that we have done medicine for the past 10 years, just do exactly that, models. We're happy with that. That's what you're getting when you buy an AI system that is trained on medical data. You're not getting some futuristic performance. You're getting models that we've forced to behave like the past decade of doctors, not the best doctors, but just doctors in the medical system that will allow us to buy their data have behaved. It's not that.
Any other questions?
Next question.
So given what you do in public health and training models correctly, do you think that the potential of AI matches this demand for data centers? Like, do we need as many data centers? Do we need the scaling up?
We do not. I heard that question, and I want to tell you, I can say with 100% certainty as a professor at MIT who has worked at Google, who takes like funding from, we do not need these data centers. The kind of AI that companies will not help you. Do you think ChatGPT is making your doctor better? Do you think that the fact that GPT is now integrated into Epic and it's now answering the patient-provider messages that your clinicians are supposed to be answering is going to make your clinicians better? No, it is not. Instead of dumping billions of dollars into an AI system that will incorrectly answer your messages, maybe the hospital should put some money into training more support staff. There are problems with our healthcare system or whatever system, technology will solve it. No, it will not. Put that same money into actually solving their problems. I develop AI. I love AI. I think it's super cool. I think it can detect subclinical things early. That is not what these companies are doing. Also, these companies are buying professors. 2 left MIT in the past 2 years. All of Berkeley is gone. Stanford is gone. Like, they are being purchased by companies to go work in those companies so that there aren't people who will speak out and say, oh, we don't need this. This isn't good, because everybody's trying to cash in on this AI bubble before it pops.
Next question?
Yes, exactly how can we or our government, or we'll say our better politicians, regulate AI for us as citizens? I know you've thought about it, I can tell by the look on your face.
Exactly, how can we our government, our politicians, oh my God. It's shocking to me. Do you know how much regulation there is for AI in Europe? Forget Europe. Do you know how much regulation there is for AI in China? In China, it is illegal to have an AI system impersonate a human. Like, your company will be like disbanded. It has to the system has to always say, like, this is an AI system, this is not a human, you're not talking to a human, I have fragility, right? I don't understand why we don't have that. You've heard about all of these teenagers who have committed suicide after they've had chats with character AI and convinced them that they should kill themselves. How is that legal? How is it possible that this is okay? Right? Like, there is no reason that we should not have stronger regulation in America. The federal government is so deeply cozy with all of the tech industry. At the inauguration, who didn't see Sam Altman, Jeff Bezos, you name it, the tech CEOs were there. And in some, I mean, look at Elon Musk. Everybody has purchased, by donating to the right people, this sort of oh, we won't regulate that yet. And when states have tried to regulate, the federal government has tried to step in. So California, for example, I have beef with California for other reasons, but they have worked very hard to try to create consumer protection law that says if you try to discriminate against a person using AI, that's illegal. And so, for example, the lawsuits against United Health and other insurers that have been denying thousands of patients' claims at a time using AI, those lawsuits are happening in California. Massachusetts doesn't have a law like that. New Mexico doesn't have a law like that. You need laws to protect consumers, because what companies are doing is they're saying like, oh, this is a new way to create all of these inequities on the ground using algorithms. And by the time we just delay the federal government, so by the time they try to regulate us, we'll be so far ahead that it'll be difficult for them to unenmesh our systems from their health systems, their education systems, their finance systems, and then they let them try to regulate us. We need regulation now. We need regulation before deployment, and we need regulation that is centering and ennobling humans. That's what it's supposed to do. That's what technology is supposed to do.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. I'm sitting right here. But yeah, I just actually have a follow-up question for what you just explained. Could you maybe elaborate like what that regulation looks like if it involves like either like more data analyzation, or if it requires like a licensed medical folks to go through that data now? That's where my mind's at. Or even thinking of does that open things more up for job positions?
Oh, okay. There are so many things you can do. The first thing that you could do at a high level is create regulation like California that says no matter what area of human interaction we're talking about, education, healthcare, finance, criminal, legal, if an AI system discriminates against people, that is illegal, and it opens up a liability to that company. Okay, just full stop. It is not legal if an algorithm does it, and it opens you up to liability, and you can be sued in the state. So that's the first thing that you can do, no matter where it is. Within health specifically, did you know that there are really amazing laws for example, we have civil rights laws that say that the education system has to be equal for different people. We also have financial laws that were hard won in the 80s, right? Saying that you can't discriminate against different groups for loans, like women. Women can get loans, women can have credit cards, amen. But that doesn't exist in healthcare. There's no law that says that you can't, there's no law that says you have to audit. We have to audit banks to make sure that they are not, for example, every year giving no loans to women, even though there are women applicants. There is a legal department. There is a government entity, a federal entity that audits banks. And because of that, banks have their own separate department, their own auditing department that audits their own practices to make sure that they are not being bad. That doesn't exist in hospitals. That does not exist in healthcare. There is nobody out there checking. And so this is not an AI problem. This is just something that AI could make worse. And so the first thing is make sure that your systems are set up to protect consumers without AI. And the second thing is make sure that AI cannot get around those consumer protections. You have specific laws that are against that.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I
Thank
apologize.
you.
Yeah, we need to end the time, but thank you so much.
Alrighty, our last speaker is Norm Gong, and he'll be talking about water.
I'm really impressed with this outspokenness against Project Jupiter. Because Project Jupiter has been really secretive about all of their plans, it's really hard to say what they're going to do. But what I want to tell you is something you probably don't want to hear, but it's something you need to know about very much. And that is where we are right now, the lower Rio Grande in New Mexico, we are in water bankruptcy. And there's no question about that. A United Nations author recently proposed that we use the term water bankruptcy because water crisis is applied to everything, you know, from a broken water heater to, you know, to the devastating issues that many communities across the world are facing with water. And I have some notes, so let me cover this deliberately. So water bankruptcy is beyond crisis. The author compares it to a permanent failure state. And what that means is we never can get back to where we were. We're gonna have a diminished water future, and that's just the way it is. And the reason for that is climate change and carbon emissions and methane emissions and all the things we're doing that are aggravating the system right now. I have some slides I'm going to run through, but I'd like to go through my narrative first, and maybe the slides will help. So according to this, the state engineer's top hydrologist that was involved in the litigation with Texas and the United States over how much water can be used in New Mexico in the lower Rio Grande, below Elephant Butte Dam. Not only have we emptied Elephant Butte Dam, but we've also taken 3/4 of an Elephant Butte reservoir worth of water out of the aquifer. That's a pretty big hole in the aquifer. And some people don't realize that when you pump groundwater, you're really taking from the river, but just think about it for a minute. The river made the aquifer. It laid it down. It is intimate with it, if you will. The river flows over the top of it. And when you take 1.5 million acre-feet out of what the river flows over the top of, it's going to lose a lot of water. And that is the situation that caused Texas to, after threatening in 1997, I was personally involved in these cases as a state official, or back then, they finally sued in 2013 in the United States Supreme Court. The reason they didn't sue before that is because they also had unclean hands. They have uncontrolled pumping. In fact, their constitution prohibits them from controlling groundwater pumping. But there's a lot of litigation, and 13 years later, and a lot of pain and incredible cost later, we have a settlement. Now, how many of you know about the settlement? The court-ordered settlement that says what New Mexico has to do. Just a few people. So I'm going to tell you really briefly about why that matters. Substantial reductions in groundwater pumping are coming, not maybe, but they are coming. It starts with the state being required by the United States Supreme Court to purchase 18,200 acre-feet of groundwater rights and permanently retire them. And that has to be from willing sellers. And willing sellers is a big deal because they're going to be competing with project. And the 18,200 acre-feet really just scratches the surface. It won't be nearly enough. You know, as I was driving down from Albuquerque this morning, I noticed that the farm fields after I passed Chihuahua Dam look different. There's a lot of fallowed land this year, a lot of bare ground, and also brand new pecan seedlings. So I want to go through the math with you, and I guess I'd like to go to my next slide, please. I'll just tell you about the math. So, oh well, this is important too. So to get you oriented, the Rio Grande Compact allocates the water of the Rio Grande in wet times and dry between Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. And there are 3 allocations in New Mexico. One is above the Otoe gauge. The Otoe gauge is on the bridge to Los Alamos, just south of Espanola. So above, between the Otoe gauge and Elephant Butte Dam, and then in New Mexico, below Elephant Butte Dam, not calling not including what's called the Texas Nacia. So, next slide. I did this analysis some time ago. I looked at the last 50 years, 1975 to the current time. That's basically my career. To see what water at the Otoe gauge had done. Why is water at the Otoe gauge important? It's because it is the entire supply for both the Middle Rio Grande and the Lower Rio Grande. So if you look at the statistics at the first 1/3 of years, 17 years, the average was 1.19, about 2 million acre feet a year. And there were 10 of 17 years that were above 1 million acre feet a year. 1 million acre feet is not a bad year. It's not good. I mean, it's not great, but it's pretty good. We'll now go to the most recent 17. We've lost 1/3 of our water coming in. And now we're down to 4 years out of 17 instead of the previous 10 that are over 1 million acre feet. And the drier years are more numerous. Well, these wet years, you'll just have to take my word for it. They were nice while they lasted, but they didn't have a lasting effect. There was no effect on the trend. And so what we need to look about is what's the future going to bring. So I basically averaged the low flow years that aren't in the dark brown, and that was 655,000 acre feet per year at the Otoe gauge. So that water has to be split a bunch of ways. And I'm not going to go over all of that, but basically the whole Lower Rio Grande gets 57%, and then the New Mexico portion of the Rio Grande gets 57% of that. So it works out to be about 1/3. And the basic situation is that under the settlement, the amount of water that New Mexico will be entitled to deplete is less than the water than it takes to irrigate 40,000 acres of pecans. So think about that for a minute. The 1/3 share is 213,000 acre feet per year. Compare that to what we've been using. And 270,000 acre feet is the most senior claim from the EBID farmers. Now, this year, the Elephant Butte Irrigation District Board just declared a 4-inch allotment for the district, 4 inches. Where's the rest of the water going to come from? It's going to be pumped from the groundwater. So the settlement, actually, the state expects it to be approved by the Supreme Court this June. That means a decree and an injunction against New Mexico. And the accounting becomes effective in January. New Mexico has to deliver a certain amount of water to El Paso. That means the river has to run the gamut of all the wells. The Supreme Court decree says that groundwater pumping is going to have to be diminished to bring the river efficiency up so it leaks less into the groundwater. And I don't think anybody knows completely what that looks like, but it looks like a whole lot less groundwater. The bottom line is you are entitled to use in the Lower Rio Grande the amount of water that was used on average between 1951 and 1978. And there's technical reasons for that, but I need to go on. Let's see. The adjudication court said that Elephant Butte Irrigation District farmers are senior to everybody else. They have a right to 3 acre feet per acre for all of the lands that had groundwater pumps on them in 1978. So that's not everybody, but it's a whole lot. And if the water is not enough to meet the needs of the irrigators, what about the cities? What about NMSU? Well, the settlement says they are out of priority, and the City of Las Cruces, the Bureau of Reclamation, the State Engineering, Interstate Stream Commission, and Elephant Butte Irrigation District are negotiating behind closed doors now. They have to finish by October to say how that's going to work out. What will Las Cruces and NMSU have to do to legally pump water? Where will it come from? It's going to have to come from farmers. It's gonna have to be compensated. They may make some kind of a deal, but citizens aren't gonna have an input into it. What Jupiter actually costs. So any new use adds another bidder to the competitive frenzy that's going to be occurring in this region to buy water rights, because it's all the cities and towns, it's all the industries, it's everybody, the EBID. And there are things in the settlement that say water can be transferred to other uses, but those details haven't been worked out. So you bring Jupiter in, it has an unquantified water use, you know, they talk about all kinds of things, and of course you know that what they say is not reliable, so we have to wait for more information. But the situation with Jupiter is going to be bad for Las Cruces, bad for MSU, bad for anybody who's going to have to buy water for their systems in the future from farmers. Now, in New Mexico, to get approval of a water rights permit, 3 conditions have to be met. How much? Okay. 3 conditions have to be met. They can't impair another user, but forget about groundwater impairment. As long as people can deepen their wells, the state engineer doesn't consider impairment to be in effect on another straw in the aquifer, as long as water is available. The second test is contrary to the conservation of water within the state. And the third test, which is the one that I think has some teeth here, a water rights transaction cannot be detrimental to the public welfare of the state. And anything that puts New Mexico under greater jeopardy in complying with the decree is detrimental to the public welfare of the state. Public welfare explicitly includes compliance with compacts and court decrees as determined by the state engineer and the general counsel. There's a brackish water out there. I'm going to switch topics very briefly. The ancestral Rio Grande, and before this valley was incised, was up there on the West Mesa, and it flowed way down into Mexico and looped back up to come around Cristo del Rey and through the El Paso Gap. And it laid down a big aquifer. And in Mexico, the aquifer is potable, and that is Juarez's water supply. In New Mexico, it's brackish and it's spotty. And there's a man named Charlie Crowder, who is the originator of all of this. Who knows the name Charlie Crowder? Well, he's an interesting historical character. He was an El Paso lawyer who studied New Mexico water law, and he found the chink in 1970 that his successors are exploiting today. So the place of use of the right for this sod farm is huge. It includes the intermodal transportation, the rail to truck facility. It's massive. And Charlie Crowder was smart enough to say that I want water and I want it for everything, anywhere in this huge place, and the state engineer gave him a permit to do that. But here's the rub. It has a 1970 priority date. It's not a priority. Now, how long will it take the state engineer to get around to doing that? I don't know. Here's the thing I think that really makes me angry. Our water is going away because of climate change, and they're making it worse. And it literally is going away. Climate change is stealing our water from us. So they want to drink from the river, because ultimately that's the only source of the water, and their emissions will help to kill it. I'm going to go through some more slides here. Can you back way up? Okay, 1 minute. Well, so this is where we're. Go to the next slide. This is the Otoe gauge on the bridge to Los Alamos. The lower Rio Grande gets most of the water. The middle Rio Grande is capped. The middle Rio Grande is not meeting its compact obligations, which means there's likely going to be well, maybe we can stay out of court again. Next slide. Temperature in New Mexico is projected to go from 6.5 degrees in the northwest to 5 degrees above what we have now. By 2070, this chart shows temperature under high emissions and low emissions scenarios. We're in the high emissions scenario now. This is a model of the flow at Otoe. And by the time you get out here a few years, the differences in high emission scenario and low emission scenario are huge. We cannot let this happen. Next slide. The green is the farmers pumping. The black is all other pumping, basically. Domestic, commercial, municipal, industrial. What the state says is that all of the increases are due to this, to Illinois pumping. The farmers are going to be allowed to pump as much in the future, provided they comply with compact, as they did in the severe 50s drought. Next slide. I'm president of the New Mexico Water Advocates. I write about these things and investigate them. That's what I do for entertainment in my retirement. I was pleased to co-author this article with Beth Bardwell, and it really lays out some of what I've told you, so I'd encourage you to look it up. Next slide. This is by one of our board members who is a PhD scientist, and he tells us the difference. This is not drought. This is aridification. Drought end. This is not going to end. And there are physics reasons that our future is going to get drier. Next slide. I took this picture of Elephant Butte last time I visited it. Wow. Next slide. This is what it looked like in 2022. So this is not new. Next slide. I guess that's it.
Danny.
No questions about water bankruptcy, huh?
Hi, thank you for your information. I come from a background of environmental planning, so unfortunately, yeah, like, electing Trump was the worst thing we did, y'all, and really, like, it's not, you know, unfortunately gonna go back to those resources that we had, but I'm curious, I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm projecting, because, you know, there's only a limited, I think, of regulation I see in the future when it comes to not only this project, but like, you know, there's data and water wars, and so I'm wondering, because I've seen cases too, like an example that comes to mind is Los Angeles, California. They're like on that one side of the Sierra Mountains, and they like droughted that whole lake just to, you know, develop that city, Lake Owen, I think. And you know, there's those communities out there, tribal nations. How, like, is... Yeah, I am gonna ask the question, but I'm just saying, like, is that what's going to happen? Like, that's what I'm thinking, because there's only so much water sources here in New Mexico, and only so much farmers too. That's just where that's where.
Well, we don't have enough water for all those pecans, period. We probably don't have enough water for alfalfa and forage to feed so we can eat meat like we enjoy today. But we have to get by on what we have, and I think that humans ought to have the first priority. Unfortunately, our law doesn't say that. It says first in time, first in right, and that's all that matters. But equity will come into play here, and we're just gonna have to wait and see how it plans out. So, yeah, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem.
My question has to do with, we are standing on one of the largest aquifers in New Mexico. the possibility, based on the legal aspects, what we are due to give Texas, what we have to do to the farmers, are we eligible to build a desalination unit here?
The question, yeah, are we eligible to build desalination? I think desalination is going to be really important to the future of the Rio Grande in New Mexico. It is in El Paso, and you know that. And it's going to take time, and they are yet to drill their first exploratory well up on the West Mesa, and what they're trying to find is a place they could pump from that wouldn't affect the river. I hope they can. It's going to take time. It's going to take time and money.
Really, I just want to ask about how receptive you find any of the farmers to be. I know I've been discussing this with some of them over the years, for at least 35 years, and their concerns about pecans and all the rest of that. Are you finding any of them receptive to the issues?
I'm a retired state official. I don't talk much to farmers down here. When I did talk to them officially, their message was that by the time we got around to controlling them, their 401ks would be full.
I have a question. So at some of the county commission meetings, there have been a few individuals who have said that the amount of water that Project Jupiter will use is just a drop in the bucket compared to how much Las Cruces and Ag uses. What would be your answer to that?
Well, NMSU and the city of Las Cruces together use about 22,000 acre-feet of water a year. You know, and what population and what information and what economy does that support? You know, it's our life down here. And by the way, I grew up, my parents lived in Anthony when I was born, and I went to grade school in Deming and college in Las Cruces. So I once said, I'd rather move to Texas than move to Albuquerque, but it was a mistake.
Hello. So I've heard a lot about pumping beneath our aquifer and desalinating that water there. What are the dangers of that creating a low pressure beneath our aquifer and the aquifer draining in? Do we know when that will happen or what the dangers of that will be?
So the Lower Rio Grande is very well understood after the litigation and lots of work. And the issue is not that can we pump the brackish water that's way down there deep or the salty water. It's that any water that is pumped from the shallow alluvium, which goes from across the valley floor, or the underlying Santa Fe group aquifer, which is the real aquifer, anything that takes water out of those is going to affect the surface. And it's like a double bind. There's this vast aquifer down there that you can't use because it's hydraulically connected to the river. You just need to think, pumping the river and diverting water into canals is basically the same thing.
Okay, like with the continued loss of water, how will New Mexico agriculture change? How will it have to change? And what can farmers do to help this?
Well, I think that dealing with New Mexico's water situation is going to take leadership from the top. And Michelle Lujan Grisham's whole water management scheme has been to really ignore hydrologic reality, that's what I call it, and to focus on new water, cloud seeding, brackish water, produced water treatment. What we need to do is come to grips with the reality. We know what the reality is, and we're going to have to let people know. I mean, how many folks here knew about what I had to say? One of the other things I said, this has been short. The water advocates would love to participate in a forum in Las Cruces sometime in the near future to explore the settlement and what it means in more depth. I think that it's crucial that more people understand it. You can't have officials meeting behind closed doors in secret with no information to the public. It's just not acceptable.
Question here. You had mentioned that there was a, I'm down here. Sorry. That there was a third line item where we had teeth. Could you expand on that with regard to Project Jupiter?
I'm going to tell you a little short story about it, yes. It's a water right permit application cannot be granted if granting it would be detrimental to the public welfare of the state. So you are right here where that term originated, because El Paso tried to drill wells in the Mesilla Valley, and the state engineer had not yet declared his jurisdiction over this area, which means anybody could do anything without asking him. And so they tried to do that. That wasn't really accepted, and it was defeated. But the result of that was the state engineer added that not only can a water right application granting it not impair anybody, but impairment you got to recognize is a really, really narrow definition. It can't be contrary to the conservation of water within the state or detrimental to the public welfare of the state. And the state has been, the state water agencies, including the one I used to be the director of, have said publicly, repeatedly, that they've said, well, what is the public welfare of the state? Well, it's compliance with the Endangered Species Act, it's compliance with court decrees, it's compliance with settlements, and compacts. And now, since we have, what I didn't tell you, I don't think, was, well, maybe I did. Starting next year, New Mexico has a delivery obligation to the El Paso gauge based on the amount of water that's released from Chihuahua. And at the end of the year, they're gonna add it all up, and New Mexico is gonna get a debit. It under-delivered. And the next year, they're gonna do the same, add it up, New Mexico's gonna debit. Well, that debit's gonna grow, and then more stringent penalties are gonna kick in, and it's just going to snowball, in my opinion. But why hasn't the state released all of their information about this? Because they're too busy talking. It's actually because they don't have capacity. And I mean, it's just another very stupid thing that the Mexicans have done. We're one of the driest states. We depend on groundwater more than any other state in the union. That's because we don't have much surface water. And yet we treat our water like it's inexhaustible. We don't regulate it. It's not politically acceptable to regulate people's water use. What we lack, it was said before, the political will. You are political will. We need to make our voices known.
I have a question. I know that, with the political will and hopefully changing of political will and recognizing that a lot of our water is allocated through this court case, if you were to make like a legislative wish list on how to improve the water future of New Mexico, what would that look like?
Well, in general, it would be to face hydrologic reality and deal with it. And what does that mean specifically? Well, there's a regulation on the states. The state engineer has a regulation. I helped to write it way back when. It was promulgated in 2004. It was immediately litigated and upheld by the New Mexico Supreme Court in 2012. It says the state engineer has the authority to regulate water on the basis of the best information available. It doesn't mean he can determine what your water rights are, but it means he can regulate water. And the sum of total water use can't exceed the supply. We were doing that, and we were mining the aquifer, and we've drawn down Elephant Butte till nothing's left. The Supreme Court says that we can't mine the aquifer anymore, and we have to make the river flow again. And that's gonna be super tough. So, we passed 3 good laws that aren't funded for implementation. There's this Active Water Resources Management. There's the Water Data Act, which says that all the state agencies have to make all water data public so that anybody can use it and get access to it and see it and do the kind of things that I've shown you that I've done. And then the third one is the 2023 Water Security Planning Act. Both those laws, 2019 Water Data Act and the 2023 Water Security Planning Act, passed unanimously. But guess what? Nathan Small's committee is not funded.
So we have, I'll get the person in the front, for 2 more questions. Is that okay?
One more? Yeah.
One more question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you give us any, like, a routine and pick up on a future customer?
Can't hear you.
Can you give us any hope? I'm 18 and I'm scared for my future.
Let's pass it to Dave.
Can I give you hope? Yes. Would you rather be in New Mexico, where we're small and we might have the capability of solving these drought problems? Like, there's plenty of water for Las Cruces and in MSU if agriculture cuts back. What's that going to take? We have to get there, and so there's hope there. But the other piece of hope is what if you lived in the South or in the East and you had to deal with flooding? I'd rather be high and dry myself, but hey, I went to grade school in Deming. No, I don't mean to be trite. I am super concerned for my children's future. Not my children, but my grandchildren. That's why I'm doing this.
There's not an open Q&A after this? No.
So,
Can we close and
yeah,
if people still
hold
have
on.
questions? Okay, yes.
all right, so that was our last presenter. What we're going to do is have a closing, and then rather than have just like an open Q&A, our presenters will be here. We have the room until 4 o'clock. And so you can come and talk to the presenter that you would like to. I think our Zoom presenters are no longer here. Right, so we have at least our 2 here. And you can come and talk with them, and we encourage you to talk with yourselves as well.
All right, thank you all for coming, first of all. And so before I do my closing, I also want to thank all of the folks that lent their hand to organizing this afternoon, in particular Esperanza, Zach, Lisa. Kiki, there's so many more. Right, Annie, right. There's so many folks that were behind this. This doesn't happen, right, just because we feel like it. This is actual volunteer effort, and people that really, really care about what's gonna happen to our community, and that includes everybody in this room, right? So someone asked, is there hope? There's absolutely hope. There's 100% absolutely hope. It's in this room. It's all of us coming together, standing up and saying, not here, not in our home, because we care about it, right? We don't need a data center. We absolutely do not need that. Even if we could make it work environmentally, no, we don't need it. We don't need it to do what they say that it's gonna do, and we certainly don't need it to send our water to machines. I agree with Norm 100%. Water should be for people first. Water for people, not for machines. And I'm just gonna do this, and I didn't ask for permission, and I apologize ahead of time. So someone also mentioned about political will. Political will also is in this room, and also people need to stand up and run for office, because those folks are the ones who are making the decisions. And most of you know this, but I will say it out loud, right? I am one of those people, right, who's asking for your vote and standing up. And so we need a cohort of people who are gonna stand up, and not business as usual, who are gonna say no to these types of projects, and who are gonna prioritize people, prioritize our communities, and prioritize our environment. So before we get up and have a little mingling, we did want to take a photo. Everybody has a poster underneath your chair. Yeah, maybe you want to sit.
they don't want to sit up front, and so we want to take a photo. So the other thing I'll just mention about all the organizing work that we've been doing, yeah, keep them up, is folks have been going to the county commission since this vote has taken place. We're taking photos. And we've been asking the county commission to hold a public meeting. And it's been scheduled for June 18th. And you should have received some information about that. We don't know the exact location yet, because they haven't said it. We should know, hopefully this Tuesday. They're going to tell us. But please mark your calendars. It will be in the evening. It will be we're thinking either here in Las Cruces or somewhere in Sunland Park. So again, mark your calendars. Get ready for that meeting. But so we want together, right, to say water for people, right? Let's do it together. Water for people. One more time. Water for people. And we're gonna come on the 18th and say that as well? Yes. All right, thank you all. You're more than welcome. Yeah, stand up and you can come talk to the presenters if you have other questions for us that organize this event. Again, you wanna raise your hand. Esperanza, Annie, Zach, up here, Christine, and Nisha. So thank you all for coming. Yes, and so sign up. If you didn't sign up already at the door, please make sure you sign up. You'll get an email. Keep the posters, bring them on June 18th. Take the posters with you, come back on June 18th. Make sure you sign up so you can get the correct information about where the meeting will be taking place. If you want to volunteer in any other way, also the folks at the table who are taking down your names, let them know. Yes, if you want to volunteer. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you. Have a good afternoon.
No, victory. I was holding a sock. You definitely do it like this so it's not planned perfect. Hey, you take an extra poster. Taking more than your share. I know you are. But glad that you came. Do you want to go pick up? You should go talk to him. Oh, you? How was the combination? Oh, you did. So, see this little guy right here? It's a little nub. Hey! I was wondering if you dated, Earl! Hi, very good. Oh, good. Well, you remember Jen? I think you ran into me. So, I was so delighted when the presenter was talking about AI.